Okay, I'm calling to order the 7th night of Arlington's annual town meeting. We have some zoning articles coming up that may have some contentious debate and potentially unfamiliar sequences of procedures. Well, unfamiliar to anyone who hasn't read this book. When it comes to procedures, I'll make it as clear as I possibly can what the sequence of procedures is going to be. That said, it's not feasible to give a complete picture of all the possible sequences of procedures because I can't predict the kind of motions that might be made from the floor, which could make things more interesting. And some folks were asking me over email, and I can't give you a complete picture of all the ways that that flow chart can play out. I'll have more to say about this when we get to Article 40. On the topic of debate, it's totally acceptable to call out what you think is a bad idea, whether it's a bad idea for town meeting to take a certain action or a bad idea to take no action. What you cannot do is make personal attacks against another person or a class of people. For example, it's not acceptable to say that anyone who makes that argument has bad intentions. Your opinion on someone else's intentions is inadmissible during debate, and I will call it out if it happens. We often hear about the better angels of our nature. That's not about being polite or a pushover. It's about acting in alignment with our country's founding principles that I spoke about 3 weeks ago. You can be fierce and effective in your arguments without indulging in personal attacks. And frankly, given the values of this community as I know it, engaging in personal attacks will likely lose you more votes than you gain. And lastly, if you lament the divided and polarized state of our country, then use this opportunity to show how democracy should be done, with sharply focused deliberation that cuts to the heart of contentious issues, while remaining respectful toward those you disagree with. Now please rise for the national anthem. And thank you to Eric Helmuth, who came straight from a select board meeting. Thank you, Eric. And also, just a reminder, please silence your phones so as to not interrupt the proceedings. Thank you. Ms. Mahan?
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. It is moved that if all the business of the meeting is set forth in the warrant for the annual town meeting is not disposed of at this session, when the meeting adjourns, it adjourns to Wednesday, May 21st, 2025 at 8 p.m.
Okay, we have a motion and a second that if we don't finish tonight, we'll re-adjourn on Wednesday, May 21st at 8 p.m. All those in favor say yes. Yes. All those opposed say no. It is unanimous. Let's now bring up the test question. Okay, the test question is, in municipal zoning, the terms zone and district mean the same thing. I was going to ask someone from the ARB this question, like privately, but I thought it'd be more interesting to just kind of put it out there and democratize it and see what the people say. This is a 2/3 vote. All right, it's not increasing housing, or you know. All right, I did ask an AI chatbot, but I don't trust that answer. And it fails, 25 in the affirmative, 141 in the negative. So my understanding from an AI chatbot is that, and we'll scroll through the screens now, so the voting screens, is that the technical term is zoning district, and it gets abbreviated to zone or district, which are equivalent. Is that, okay. Okay. It's like soda pop. Some of us call it soda, some call it pop. But your vote on the test question will not impact the validity of your votes later this evening. And I can't say how voters might judge your answers to this, but. Okay, great. Do we have any announcements or resolutions? Right? Yes, Ms. Pyle.
Good evening. My name is Elizabeth Pyle. I'm a town meeting member from Precinct 8. I wanted to talk to you tonight because I'm on the board of Arlington Belmont Crew, and thank you. And my daughter Lucy Rose on that team. We are a nonprofit entity in town. We have about 80 rowers. About 75% of our rowers are from Arlington. They're in grades 8 through 12. We're an entirely parent-funded and community-funded organization. And many of you may have heard that on Saturday night, we experienced a terrible incident where our team had just come back from a regatta, and our trailer was loaded with all of our boats that are good for racing. It's 11 boats, and a guy stole the truck that was attached to the trailer and drove it up the wooded embankment by Spy Pond onto the bike path, and drove it down the bike path and hit things, and then drove it into Cambridge and Route 2 and Belmont, and really committed mayhem throughout the towns. And the boats, some of the boats flew off. Eventually, the trailer tipped on its side. The Belmont police stopped him in Belmont and took him into custody. This is just a devastating incident for our organization. I want to thank the first responders in Arlington and Belmont and Cambridge who responded so quickly and were able to apprehend the suspect so quickly. I also want to extend our sympathies to people in the community whose cars were damaged. There were multiple hits and runs throughout all three towns, property damage. And we extend our sympathy to those people. And I also want to thank the community, because the community has already started to rally around us, and we've received tremendous support. And I want to thank everybody who's already responded and offered to help and made contributions. And if you are so inclined to make contributions to our hardworking athletes who train very hard for a very difficult sport and on very expensive equipment, we would really appreciate it, and it would go a long way toward rebuilding our program and continuing to have a successful program in the future. And our website is Arlington Belmont Crew. If you just Google that, you can see a link to our fundraising page on our website, and we would very much appreciate anything that you can provide, and please spread the word to your networks as well as we rebuild this program and recover from this tragic, unforeseen event. So thanks very much.
Do we have any other announcements or resolutions? Yes, here on the left.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Scott Mullen, Precinct 3, also a member of the Zero Waste Arlington Committee. For those who don't know, we have a new waste hauling contract starting in July. You can go online right now and choose express your preference for your cart size. The default right now is every resident gets 2 64-gallon carts. Every 2 family gets 4 64-gallon carts. You can opt into a smaller cart for your waste if you so choose. Perhaps you don't have enough space to store. Perhaps you don't generate that much waste. Maybe there's a hardship. Maybe you're currently sharing with your neighbor upstairs 2 carts right now. So you can express your preference. Go to the town's website, link to the trash page off the main page, and look for the information there. I think this is closing this Friday, although... Can I finish? I'm sorry. I think this is closing this Friday, although we're asking for an extension to June 2nd. Yes.
Is it a quick question that I can repeat?
Have they already been ordered? Because my way of order is if we take a smaller cup, we'll take it away from somebody that's really sincerely needing it. So are we getting it fresh, or are we shuffling just a few smaller ones?
Mr. Moderator, probably not a question for me?
Yeah, you can answer that question if you have the...
No,
or town manager.
I don't know.
Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Jim Feeney, Town Manager. We have ordered the lion's share of the carts for the community. As of right now, we have ordered enough of the smaller carts to meet all of the demands that have been expressed to date. Thank you.
Okay. So we're not going to open the speaker queue on this, but if you have a quick question, yeah.
We'll probably table that.
You'll have to get back to that. Okay, someone will have to get back to you on that. Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator.
Thank you. Do we have any other announcements or resolutions? Yes, Ms. Malofchek.
Beth Malofchek, Precinct 9. I want to encourage everyone to get to 13 Forest Gallery in East Arlington for the exhibit, People, Plants, and Revolution. It's really fantastic. There are 3 distinct components. I was really impressed by the work of the artists. You see some of it reproduced in the banners along Mass Ave, but to get to the gallery, I think is worthwhile, and it's closing Friday. Also, since you're going to go to the gallery, and then next Tuesday at 7 p.m. there's a free talk and reception at Old Schwa Mill, one of my favorite spots in town, and it's Cecily Miller will be explaining the concept behind this, and I did hear her speak at Forest Gallery, and her talk is really worthwhile and makes these artworks much more meaningful. So I encourage everyone to get to both places. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Any other announcements or resolutions? Yes, with the orange flag. Ms. Stone.
Am I at the right place for the mic? Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Betty Stone, Precinct 7. And I got to the podium here, the mic, using my flag. It was safe, didn't have a problem. Many of you know that these flags are around town, and a lot of pedestrians in the past few years have not had such an easy time. I am a member of Everywhere Arlington Livable Streets. I encourage you to get one of our flyers. We have flyers on the back table. Everywhere Arlington Livable Streets, or EALS, is a community group working for safe, accessible streets, sidewalks, and paths for walkers, bikers, transit users, and drivers. Get a flyer so you can find out more about us, what we do, what our priorities are, the projects that we're following in town. And there's a handy little QR code for you to sign up to get emails and learn more about us, and get involved and use your flags. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other announcements or resolutions? Oh, Mr. Feeney.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Jim Feeney. Wanted to take a moment to acknowledge that it is National Public Works Week and take the opportunity to also read the punchline from the proclamation the Select Board just approved at their 6:45 p.m. meeting. And it is, "Now therefore be it resolved that the Town of Arlington designates the week of May 18th to 24th, 2025 as National Public Works Week, and I urge all residents to pay tribute to our public works staff and to recognize the substantial contributions they make every day to protecting and advancing the quality of life for all in Arlington." And in light of National Public Works Week, wanted to invite this body to join us for an open house and ceremonial ribbon cutting this Thursday, May 22nd at 5 p.m. at the new DPW facility on Grove Street. So come by and check it out. Mike will give you a tour.
Okay, any other announcements or resolutions? Seeing none. Are there reports to be received tonight? Seeing no reports. Ms. Deschler? Oh, wait, so we don't have to take Article 3, so sorry, we will just resume Article 38. Can we show the speaker queue that was saved from Wednesday night? Okay. And let's see, where did we leave off? Let's see, I didn't take note of our last speaker, but Stephanie Ford Weems. Thank you. So next we'll take Guillermo Hamlin, followed by Christian Klein. Okay, let's see. Christian Klein, yes, followed by Sanjay Newton.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Christian Klein, Precinct 10, Chair of the Arlington Zoning Board of Appeals, but speaking on behalf of myself this evening. What we have before us, the two substitute motions, sort of take different approaches to how we might incorporate some commercial in what are otherwise residential districts. The Greenspan motion sort of tries to concentrate it along some of the more arterial streets in what would be apartment buildings and structures of the kind. Just doing as the moderator had done earlier, I did a little AI search online for what the rents are currently in Arlington. Average commercial rent was listed as $39 per square foot per year, and the residential was listed as $36 per square foot per year. So the rents are essentially very similar between the two. And there was I had a question, but then I realized in reviewing that we had actually answered this last time, which was that if you have an apartment and you want to open a business in your apartment, it's up to your landlord to make that determination. It's not something that the owner could make, the leaser could do on their own. And I'm assuming the same would carry over if you had a condominium. So it certainly limits the way that you would be able to take advantage of that. But I more wanted to speak to the Fleming motion, which redefines what a home occupation is. So the Zoning Board of Appeals just finished up a hearing we spent about half a year on, working with an owner of a rare commercial property in a residential district. And they were trying to find a way to transition the property to a new owner and maintain the commercial use on the site and keep it as minimal an impact on the community as possible. What we worked out with the owner and the community we thought was a fair compromise between the uses that were proposed and the necessary protection for the community. What we approved is significantly less intrusive than what's included in the Fleming Amendment. We were down to 6 or fewer trips per day instead of 10, and there were some other restrictions that were very specific to the use that was being proposed. So in a lot of ways, while I agree wholeheartedly that the home occupation definition for the town of Arlington needs a revisit and needs some improvement, I think that this unfortunately goes far too far in the liberalization of the district and how we would use home occupation to define things. And the other thing I had wanted to point out too, it wasn't really brought up. So in section 543 of the zoning bylaw, where it defines where you can use uses in the residential districts, it allows you to do home occupation in any district, in the residential district, but if you see customers or pupils, it requires a special permit. And so each of those occupations that where you are looking to have a customer come to your house, and if you're doing massage therapy or anything along those lines that are allowed today, you need a special permit. This would vastly increase the number of special permits that would be allowed, would be required in order to maintain these kinds of new businesses that would be coming into the residential district. So I encourage you to keep that in mind. We are a great board. We do as much work as we can, but obviously vastly increasing the amount of work that the board does require a little bit of foresight on our side to make sure that we're providing the level of service to the town that the town expects. And then I did just have one, I'll pass on that question. The other question is the question of enforcement. So a lot of this rests on, there are numbers of trips that are allowed per day. There are certain restrictions on what one is allowed to do. Mr. Moderator, if you could have an answer as to who is responsible for enforcing these kinds of restrictions in the zoning bylaw.
Is anyone from the redevelopment board, or is Mr. Champa here from Inspectional Services to answer that question? Mr. Champa?
Mike Champa, Director of Inspectional Services. Sorry, I tried to duck that one. Can you repeat that, please?
Sure. So when the zoning bylaw includes provisions that require a lot of oversight in order to enforce them, what kind of burden does that put on the Inspectional Services Department?
I mean, it would definitely take up some of our resources. It would depend on what the regulations were that, and and our ability to actually enforce them.
Okay. Thank you. So my encouragement to town meeting is that we do not vote in favor of either of these motions. While they do have a good impetus for trying to increase the commercial base in town, which is something we definitely need, I think that these two approaches are not going to serve the town in the way that we would wish. So thank you.
Thank you. So next we'll take Robin Bergman, followed by Steve Moore. Oh, Mr. Newton, were you removed from the list? Okay, well, you can actually, you can speak, because
You want to speak first?
because I did recognize you as the next speaker. Apologies for that.
Sanjay Newton, Precinct 10. I believe the ARB met this evening and might have discussed some of the amendments that we have before us at their meeting. I wondered if they might enlighten us as to their discussion.
Ms. Zenberry, do you have anything to report from the redevelopment board's meeting from earlier tonight?
Thank you. Rachel Zenberry, Chair of the Redevelopment Board. Appreciate the question. We did meet earlier this evening. We had previously met with regard to the green spawn substitute motion and reported back when this article was brought forth at the last meeting that the majority of the board was not in support of that substitute motion. We did have the opportunity to discuss the Fleming motion this evening. And I think when it comes to both of these articles, zoning is challenging to write. There are a lot of scenarios to think through, and town and state bylaws and ordinances to coordinate with. The board agrees, as does Christian Klein, the previous speaker, that the home occupation definition should be looked at, but the majority of the board is not in support of the way that the Fleming substitute motion is written. There's more support for that amendment than the Greenspan amendment, but it needs more work, including a public hearing from the ARB. There are a lot of items that, there are several legal and policy flaws with the Fleming amendment. There are non-commercial terms or items that are now prohibited in terms of because of the word commercial that was being added to the definition. There are a lot of items too that were fairly arbitrary in terms of the specificity. So there are some areas where it becomes overly specific and some areas where it is under-specific. So that was the body of the discussion this evening. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Moderator.
Thank you. Robin Bergman, followed by Steve Moore.
Robin Bergman, Precinct 12. So I was originally going to stand up here and support the Fleming Amendment, but I see the problems with it. But I just want to advocate that we need expanded uses or abilities for people to work at home. Like, how many of you have worked at home during either COVID or now? Probably most of you, right? So what's the difference between if you work for a company or you work for yourself at home? Someone like me can really benefit from working at home. I'm a full-time working artist. I have my own company. I'm an artist, but the IRS considers me a business because I sell my work. And I know that people have mentioned sweaters as if it was a dirty word, but I'm actually a knitwear designer, but I make things one at a time because I'm a craftsperson. So they're all handmade, hand-finished. I sometimes do have people working for me part-time. Mostly they work at home for me, but sometimes they meet with me. And I just want to, like when I first moved in here, I've been in business now, and I've been a homeowner almost the same amount of time, like more than 40 years. When I first moved in, someone I never met still reported me as running an illegal business from my home. And the doorbell rang and an inspector came to find out if I was actually running a business in my home illegally. And I invited him in, showed him the whole house, including the basement, the attic, everywhere. And he saw that I was not, and I actually was renting a space. And so, but there are many challenges to running a business, a small business, especially now. Like, my business is in Concord right now. I've been there, I've had my studio for 30 years. The same things that are happening with real estate, with the escalation of the value of real estate, is happening to commercial real estate too, so that rents are going through the ceiling. My old landlords were getting old. 2 of them died, 2 of the partners, and their families wanted to cash in the building, so they sold the buildings where my studio is about 12 years ago. Since then, the new owner has spent more than $8,000, probably more than that, on renovating the buildings. So my rent has quadrupled in 10 years, quadrupled. Well, I can tell you that my earnings have not quadrupled in 10 years. On top of that, there are now tariffs, which that is putting a lot of small businesses out of business. And then people are worried about shipments and deliveries, but I can tell you, I get less deliveries than my neighbors who get constant packages from Amazon and Chewy every day. And then in terms of having people come over, like clients, it's very few and far between, and I do think having to have special permits and things to get permission to have clients come over is ridiculous. I mean, how many people are contractors, architects, designers, high-powered people working at home? Do they have to get special permits to have a client come over to consult with them? I don't think so. So I really do think that we need to expand the definition of what's allowable at home, because otherwise we may not ever have any small businesses. So I just wanted to let people know, and whether these pass or not, I recognize all the problems with both of these 2 motions. They're maybe too broad and they haven't thought through all of the details, but I think we need to think about doing something. Thank you.
Thank you. Steve Moore, followed by Peter Gast.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Steve Moore, Precinct 18. I would like to point out to the town meeting that most of the working at home that has occurred and is occurring is already allowed under the current zoning set of rules. These two amendments expand that dramatically in a more official way, and I was attending the Zoning Board of Appeals meetings over the past many months related to the items that Mr. Klein brought up, and the board has done an excellent job at balancing the concerns of residents as well as the owner or potential owners of this commercial property that's in a residential district. The points of the issues brought up by the residents around this commercial property that's a bit of a unique situation in town were...
I'm sorry, Mr. Mark, you step maybe like an inch or two away from the microphone.
Oh, am I too close? I'm sorry.
Yeah, it'd be less popping sounds. Yep.
Thank you. The interests of the residents in the area around this property were many, consistent, loud, and in some cases, to my mind anyway, quite valid. And this would be expanded dramatically with these two amendments to the zoning bylaw. I also want to applaud Ms. Zemsbury's comments because I don't think these amendments are thought through. And the fact that our professional board, which I disagree with actually quite regularly, but they are there to do this very job, which is think through the details of these sorts of things. And the fact that they didn't support these should be very instructive to the town. And personally, I do have kind of an issue with folks repeatedly bringing citizen-developed articles that don't necessarily have the expertise and forward thinking to necessarily think around all the corners that you have to do with these sorts of zoning things. So I would encourage the town meeting to not vote for this, to not vote for these amendments, and let the ARB do their job. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll take Peter Gast from the satellite room, followed by Austin Brown.
Peter Gast, Precinct 2. I'd like to ask, if we vote this down, is the ARB committed to addressing these issues and bringing a proposal before this body for the next year? Is this our current best proposal, or is this our delay for push this into a committee? What is the intention of the ARB?
Well, first I'll just warn that, try not to use the name of a board or committee and the word commit in the same sentence. That could be dangerous here, but I'm pretty sure that was not a motion to commit. But
that was not a motion. I was not making any motions. No moving involved.
Okay. Ms. Zembury, this is speculative, of course, but if you have any insight or context to share, that might be instructive to the meeting.
Thank you. Rachel Zembury, Chair of the Redevelopment Board. At our meeting earlier this evening, the board did discuss that, again, we think that there is a lot of potential in the Fleming substitute motion. There is a process by which these types of motions can come in front of the Redevelopment Board. You can request at any time during the year, well ahead of town meeting, to come to the Redevelopment Board, discuss your idea. We're happy to work with it through a public meeting process, and we would be more than happy to work with James through that process, or Alan on his substitute motion as well, to see if we couldn't get something that is supportable by the next town meeting.
Thank you very much. That's everything I had to ask.
Thank you. Let's see. Austin Brown, followed by Carl Wagner.
Austin Brown, Precinct 6. Mr. Moderator, I just want to ask, if I run a small business out of my home right now, I just want to confirm that that is legal under the current Arlington bylaws?
I think the answer is going to be it depends. Mr. Ciampa, Director Ciampa, do you have an answer to that question? And if the answer is it depends, can you give us some broad contours without getting into the weeds, if possible?
Mike Ciampa, Director of Inspectional Services. That's correct, it depends. And you may not want to tell me what that business is.
Well, hypothetically, at one point, my business grew to having some number of subcontractors involved, and I had them over to my apartment, and it was it was actually a madhouse. So having, it basically, I just want to say that.
Stop.
Okay. Yeah, don't do that. Basically, what I tell people when they want to do small businesses is, like, don't do it out of your house. Like, you should really get a commercial space. So I really agree with the ARB decision here to, if you, yeah, like, it's not a good idea to have a bunch of employees in your apartment. So anyways, I agree with the ARB, and I urge you to vote against both substitutes.
Thank you, and good luck, Mr. Brown. Mr. Wagner, followed by Allison Griggs.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Carl Wagner, Precinct 15. I move terminate debate on all matters before the question.
Okay, we have a motion to terminate debate on all matters under Article 38, and we have a second. All those in favor of terminating debate under Article 38 say yes. Yes. All those opposed say no. Wow. That is a 2/3 vote. Okay, so we're going to take these and we're going to take these in the order that the substitute motions were made. And when we get to Article 40, it's going to get more complicated than that, and I'll explain that when we get to Article 40 later. So we're going to first take the Greenspan, excuse me, a vote on the Greenspan substitute motion, which may or may not replace the main motion of no action. And then you're going to vote on the Fleming substitute motion, which may or may not replace the main motion, whatever that happens to be at that time. And then finally, and those are both majority votes to pass either of those substitute motions. And then finally, there'll be a third vote on the main motion, which may be no action, or it may be the Fleming substitute motion that replaced the main motion, or it may be the Greenspan substitute motion that replaced the main motion. It's going to be one of those three possibilities. And then that final vote will be a 2/3 vote. The fact that it's 2/3 on a no action doesn't really matter, but it would certainly matter for the Greenspan or Fleming proposals. Okay, so let's first, let's say, you have the article text in front of you, hopefully, in some form or another, at least through the annotated warrant or a copy of it. So I'm not going to summarize all these because there's a lot of details to them, but we're now going to take a vote on the Greenspan substitute motion. So let's bring up a vote, and this is majority vote, just to substitute this in place of the main motion of no action. Okay, so voting is now open. If you want to replace the main motion with the Greenspan substitute, then you press 1 for yes, or 2 for no to keep the main motion as no action, or 3 to abstain. Okay. Let's close voting. And the motion fails. 57 the affirmative, 149 the negative, 8 abstentions. The main motion is still no action. And so now we'll take a vote on the Fleming substitute. Similarly, this will either, if it passes, it'll replace the main motion with the Fleming proposal. If it fails, then the main motion will remain no action. So let's now bring up a vote on the Fleming substitute motion. Okay, so if you want to replace the main motion with the Fleming proposal, press 1 for yes. If you want to leave the main motion as no action, press 2 for no, or 3 to abstain. Okay, let's close voting. And the substitute motion fails. 45 in the affirmative, 160 in the negative, 8 abstentions. The main motion is still no action. And so now we can proceed to a vote on the main motion. Since it's a no action, I'll just do this by voice vote. All those in favor of, it really kind of doesn't matter either way, whether you vote yes or no. I mean, arguably you could say if the meeting votes down no action, it kind of expresses a sentiment that they want something to happen, but we haven't actually affirmed anything concrete to do. But either way, we're not doing anything, regardless of how you vote. So all those in favor of no action on the main motion of Article 38 say yes. Yes. All those opposed say no. No. It is a 2/3 vote. We will do nothing. That doesn't mean that the redevelopment board or the planning department won't do things. In the meantime, they may or may not, based on the deliberation that they heard here. Okay, that takes us now to Article 39. So let's show the speaker queue and get that cleared. Okay, so as soon as this list is cleared, then you can request to speak on Article 39. And Ms. Zemferi, did you want to introduce this article?
Good evening, Rachel Zemberry, Chair of the Redevelopment Board. First, I'd like to apologize for misstating Andrew Greenspan's name earlier. I'd like to introduce Article 39, proposing to rezone 17 Palmer Street to be included in the Neighborhood Multifamily Housing Overlay District. This was inserted at the request of the owner of 17 Palmer Street, John Harity. The board was unanimous in its support and believes that 17 Palmer Street is an appropriate addition to the neighborhood multifamily district. The ARB voted 5-0 at our April 7th meeting to recommend favorable action on warrant Article 39. Thank you.
Thank you. And did Mr. Harity wish to speak on this? I don't know if there was a request for him to speak on this, the petitioner. But we'll proceed now to, let's show the speaker queue again. And let's start off with Mark Kepline, followed by Christopher Loretti. And Mr. Kepline, just an apology about my comment the other night about skipping lights on Franklin Street. If that was disrespectful, apologies if it was, but thank you. You have the floor.
That was a statement of fact. Mark Kepline, Precinct 9. So, yeah, sorry. I live next door to this proposed project. You see on the map it says 13, but it's numbers 11 and 13. And the other night, it was voted to allow 7-9 Palmer Street to go from a B1 to a B2A, and it could be 5 stories. But this is a residential street. And I'm wondering, number 21, Palmer, could somebody tell me why that isn't included in this MBTA district, or why this non-contiguous definition of MBTA zoning overlay?
Okay, can we show this on the screen so everyone else can follow? This is page 39, at least the way it gets printed, 39, page 42 by the PDF. Oh, can we show that again? Okay.
Also, I missed the memo. I didn't get a notification for either one of those.
To the abutters or the
Yeah, for
notification from the town, you were saying?
Yeah, for the proposed change for 7 and 9 to change that zone.
A microphone, please.
Yeah, so I didn't get a notification.
You can see the slide to the side. It might be easier. Like it's a smaller display though.
Yeah, it's too small. Okay.
So the question is, why was 29 not included in the Mass Ave Broadway multifamily?
No, why is 21 not included? Why
oh, that's what I meant to say. Why is 21 not?
Over?
Yeah. Let's see. Director Ricker?
Hi, thank you. Claire Ricker, I'm your Director of Planning and Community and Development. Number 21 was not included. Number 17 nor 21 were included initially. There was the question of contiguity of the district, which is why 12 and 13 were included the way that they were to establish contiguity in the neighborhood multifamily district. 21 was not included because it abuts the the Mass Ave Broadway multifamily district, and the idea was that we were going to step down from some of the height that is available on the Broadway and Mass Ave multifamily districts to the lower heights that are allowable in the neighborhood multifamily overlay.
So you want it discontinuous? Is that what you're saying? You want it to go from high to low to high? Or
that was the idea, sir, yes.
Oh, interesting. Okay. Well, I'm not really in favor of this. I live on a residential street, and again, besides the traffic, I'd like to keep some residential character. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll take Christopher Loretti, followed by Andrew Greenspan.
Thanks, Mr. Moderator. Chris Loretti, Precinct 7. I'd like to begin with a question, and through you, I was wondering if we could ask the zoning enforcement officer that if this change does not occur, how many condominiums could be constructed on that site?
By the zoning enforcement officer, you're referring to inspectional services? Or?
Yes,
Yeah.
I believe it's Mr. Champa.
Yeah, Director Champa. Do
enforcement.
you have an answer to that question?
Mike Champa, Director of Inspectional Services. I do not have an answer to that question off the top of my head.
Okay. I'm asking, Mr. Moderator, because the ARB report lists the use as a three-family residential, but as far as I know, it's in an R2 zone or an R2 district or an R2 zoning district. And that would suggest that only 2 units are allowed, but apparently we don't know whether this is a legal three-family or not. Is that what I'm hearing?
Someone from the redevelopment board want to clarify? And can you repeat the question?
Well, the issue, Mr. Moderator, is the use listed in the ARB report to town meeting is as a three-family residential. Now, it could be a legal three-family in that it was constructed before zoning came into effect, or it could be an illegal three-family. And it appears that the owner is seeking this change to in effect, sanctify or allow this illegal use that has been going on for some period of time. And that's what I'm trying to get at.
So you want the history of how it's a three-family residential, whether it's...
Yeah, so if he has, or she has a certificate of occupancy for a three-family, then it could be converted to 3 condominiums. I don't know, the history of the property, whether they sought to do that or not, and that's what I'm trying to find out.
Right, so I understand. So does anyone from the redevelopment board know, Mr. Revlak, whether this is this apparent noncompliance predates the zoning bylaw and is kind of grandfathered in, or is it just not in compliance?
Well, there are non-compliant three-family.
Name and precinct.
Oh, Steve Revlak, Arlington Redevelopment Board. I think the real question here is, has the use existed for 10 years? Chapter 40, state law allows a non-conforming, if you create a non-conformity and it exists for 10 years, then it just becomes a legal pre-existing nonconformity. So I think the question is, can we as a municipality prove that that change was made in the last 10 years? I think the redevelopment board's position was that it was most likely a pre-existing nonconformity.
That was in use for over 10 years, and therefore...
Yes, it was a legal pre-existing nonconformity.
Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. I guess this non-lawyer is going to disagree with that non-lawyer and suggest that it probably isn't a legal use, and that in fact, if the owner tried to get a permit for 3 condominiums, the building inspector wouldn't allow it. And I've seen that in other cases in town for properties that have long had illegal apartments in them. In any case, I think Mr. Kaplan raised a really good point. And if people remember when we passed the MBTA zoning, the idea was that there would be higher buildings along Mass Ave and Broadway. That is one of the overlay districts. And then the next adjacent lot, only one lot in, would be the neighborhood district, and that would be it. This lot is in the middle of the block between Broadway and Mass Ave, and I really don't think it's appropriate to be rezoning it, and I really don't think it's appropriate to be rezoning it as a one-off. If the town wanted to have this neighborhood district go deeper off of the main thoroughfares, they should have been doing that universally throughout the town, and we shouldn't be doing it on a case-by-case basis. The other reason I don't support this is, to my knowledge, there has been one development to date in this neighborhood overlay district, And if anyone has not yet been by 5 to 7 Belknap Street, I really encourage you to drive by, because it is not the type of development we want to see in this town. There are 2 3-story cubes right next to each other, literally within 10 feet of each other, taking up almost the entire lot. There's virtually no green space and no open space on that lot, and that's not the type of development we should be encouraging. So I urge everyone to vote no on this zoning change. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll take Andrew Greenspan next, followed by Beth Ann Friedman.
Andrew Greenspan, Precinct 5. I do have a question. During the proponent brought this to the ARB. I don't recall the discussion or if I was there, but does anyone know what their reasoning, if they gave a reasoning for wanting to be in the district?
Let's see, for the petitioner? Yeah, Mr. Revlock?
Steve Revlock, Arlington Redevelopment Board. My recollection from the hearing with the petitioner was that they were interested in adding, I believe, 3 additional dwellings to their property.
Okay, and I don't know if anyone knows, based on the current size of the building, does anyone know if that would involve like making a bigger building or subdividing the building? I'm just curious if anyone knows the state of that property.
Well, Mr. Revlock, do you know how that desire could be, it might be intended to be achieved?
Well, I have not looked at sort of like the parcel for a while, but my recollection, based on the testimony of the owner, was that the house is on one side and there's sort of empty space on the other side, and he wanted to sort of expand into the empty space.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, I support this generally. We often have debates about doing one-off zoning changes and larger zoning changes, and we had a year-long discussion about the MBTA community zone, and at the end of it, some people wanted it to be bigger, some people wanted it to be smaller. Zoning is iterative. We're not going to have a perfect district to begin with. I think we should take into account the area that it's in, and from that map, and I live a block away and walk down there all the time, the surrounding buildings are of similar height and density of more units. It's a pretty, an area with lots of housing and multifamily housing larger, so I think it would fit in with the fabric. It would generate more housing, which I think we desperately need. I'm trying to think if I've got anything else. Yeah, I think it's fine. I think we should support proponents wanting to build more housing in town.
Thank you. We'll take Beth Ann Friedman, followed by Christopher Moore.
Beth Ann Friedman, Precinct 15. And I have a question about whether by one of our votes during this session, we actually converted these multifamily housing in B1 along Mass Ave into B2, allowing up to 5 to 6 stories. Am I mistaken in that?
I'm sorry, can you repeat the question? I didn't follow.
So could you ask the redevelopment board whether some of these buildings that are along Mass Ave now, with the new changes that were approved by this town meeting, whether they now convert B1 to B2 and housing which would allow up to 5 stories?
Does this relate to 17 Palmer Street under Article 39?
Well, if it's part of the neighborhood district and that we converted that district, and we agreed that those properties now could be rebuilt or whatever to bigger structures. Maybe I'm totally off base.
Which article are you referring to?
Which article am I?
Ms. Friedman, which article are you referring to?
Maybe you can help me out. The one that we just...
Sure, Rachel Zemberry, Chair of the Redevelopment Board. This existing property is not in the B district.
Oh, it's not?
It is not.
Okay. Thank you.
Great, thank you. We'll take Christopher Moore, followed by Pi Fisher.
Christopher Moore, Precinct 14. I move to terminate debate on the article.
Okay, we have a motion to terminate debate under Article 39, and we have a second. All those in favor of terminating debate under Article 39 say yes. Yes. All those opposed say no. No. Debate is terminated. So what we're voting on here, and this will be a majority vote, is the main motion, which is to add the address of 17 Palmer Street, zoned R2 residential 2-family, to the neighborhood multifamily housing overlay district. That is the main motion. So let's bring up a vote now on the main motion under Article 39. Let's open voting. If you're in favor of adding that address to the R2 residential, to the neighborhood multifamily housing overlay district, press 1 for yes. And if you wish to not make that change, press 2 for no, or 3 to abstain. Let's close voting. And the motion passes. 127 in the affirmative, 82 in the negative, 7 abstentions. It is a majority vote. Let's see, that takes us now to Article 40. So before we begin here, actually, I'll cover the procedural nuances after we've actually moved all of the initial motions. So let's show the speaker queue. And let's clear this, and as soon as this list is clear, you can request to speak under Article 40. And so, Ms. Zemberry, do you want to lead us off? And then it'll be followed by, just the order of speakers will be Ms. Zemberry to introduce the redevelopment board's recommended vote, Mr. Dave Levy, who is the petitioner and also a town meeting member, and then we have 3 motions that we'll take after that. Ms. Zemberry?
Thank you. Rachel Zemberry, Chair of the Redevelopment Board. Article 40 proposes to allow the construction of 2-family dwellings in the R0 and R1 residential districts, which currently only permit single-family dwellings by right and was inserted at the request of Dave Levy. The board was split 3-2 in its support. Board members who supported the article noted that the existing 2-family home area were already sprinkled throughout the single-family home districts and do not present negative impacts. They cited jurisdictions where this type of change has already been enacted with positive outcomes and noted that because this article will not change the dimensional requirements in the R0 and R1 districts, it will not lead to greater loss of green space and trees. One board member, who was not in favor of this article, cited the existing ADU provision as an alternative existing bylaw allowing multiple dwellings within single-family zones, and the other board member expressed concern with the lack of community outreach and engagement about this article. Many homeowners in the R0 and R1 districts do not know that this change has been proposed, as no legal notice was required for homeowners or abutters, since it is a proposed definition change and not a map change. The ARB voted 3-2 at our April 7th meeting to recommend favorable action on warrant Article 40. During our board meeting earlier this evening, the board held an informal discussion about the proposed motion to commit and the amendment for motion to commit, and voted not to support either the motion or the amendment. The board felt that the motion to commit overburdens volunteers and DPCD staff who are already committed to significantly time-consuming 2025-2026 long-range and tactical priority projects by requiring action for 2026 town meeting and seating yet another committee already established by town meeting last week. The amendment purports to prioritize the infrastructure and environmental resources, yet remove the environmental planner and DPW from the proposed committee working against own goals. And the mailing requirement, just so that everyone knows, would cost the town over $10,000 per hearing on postage materials and printing, not to mention staff time. Thank you.
Thank you. And now David Levy, who is the petitioner for the citizens petition. Can we bring up the slides, please? There we go. Mr. Levy, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Dave Levy, Precinct 18. May I have 11 minutes to speak, Mr. Moderator? I won't go use it, but just in case.
Okay, we have a request to extend from 7 minutes to 11 minutes for presentation. Is there a second? Second. All those in favor of extending the presentation to 11-minute limit, say yes. Yes. All those opposed say no. No. Does the majority vote? So it is 11 minutes.
Thank you. Could we go to the next slide, please? To my fellow residents of Arlington, Massachusetts, and fellow town meeting members, I stand before you to present Article 40, which would amend the use of the current bylaw to allow by right two-family use housing in the current R0 and R1 districts. To be clear, no other changes would occur, including setbacks, lot coverage, on-street parking, in the zoning bylaw that we have today. I voted against this nearly identical article in 2022. However, my thinking has substantially changed. When I moved here as a child in the early 90s, my parents bought our home in Newton, Massachusetts for $495,000, an expensive number today and a more expensive number then. Prior to making the decision to sell their house in 2016 and retire to North Carolina, my mom asked if they should sell the house to me and my wife. I said, thank you. I doubted we could afford it.
I'm sorry, can you step a couple of inches away from the microphone? Yeah.
They then sold the house with no contingencies for $1.6 million, and it's worth $2.4 million today. In 2015, when we bought our house in Arlington, after being priced out of Newton, we put in an offer that was 10% over asking with all contingencies waived, and we beat out 10 other bidders. Since that time, our house has increased in value by 5.5% a year after tax. What was $750,000 then is now worth $1.25 million, and if you bought your house in the 1990s like my parents did, your return is even greater. Inflation, aka price increases, of which housing is a core component, is supposed to be rising at 2% a year. If my parents and my home respectively had been rising at 2% a year, my parents' home would be worth $950,000 a day, not 2.4, and my home would be worth $940,000 a day, not 1.25 million. Hence, I think we have a problem. While my house is worth 1.25 million, teardowns or major redevelopments are selling for over $2 million a house. Teardowns are possible because our zoning code allows a maximum of 35% lot coverage for any home. This can be constructed by right in lots 6,000 square feet or greater, and this allows a home maximizing that lot coverage to have a square footage of any floor of 2,100 square feet per floor, or over 4,000 square feet in total. Hence, those are the houses you see for sale today that are being priced over $2 million. Because new homes, and frankly many older homes, are maxing out this coverage ratio, this leaves very limited options in most residential lots to put in place a separate ADU structure. And the proof is, have any homes so far been sold with an ADU, either new construction or older construction? Only 15 ADUs have been permitted so far since July 1st, 2023, and no two-family has used or permitted 2 ADUs on their property. There's been a lot of discussion about how this proposed article could easily lead to 4 units on a property, but the math simply does not work for such an option. ADUs are and will remain a personal decision. Further, there's been a lot of discussion about tree canopy. This amendment does not increase or change any setbacks, limits, heights of a single-family home or any other existing laws regarding trees. Unfortunately, as described above, if a teardown can occur and it takes down a tree, this will not change it. It will only allow 2 families to use the same space, not just one. According to the DPCD, or Department of Community Planning and Community Development, as of 2022, we have approximately 7,300 total single-family lots in the R1, R0 district today. Can you go to the next slide, please? Of those, we have 1,000 single-family lots in historical districts or conservation easements. Permitting in those is challenging, to say the least. Of the 6,300 remaining, 42% of those are in what's called non-conforming lots, with less than 6,000 square feet of space or not enough setbacks. You see a lot of non-conforming lots by Pierce Elementary, or the hills between Mass Ave and Gray Street, or many side streets near Dallin Elementary. You see a lot of those non-conforming lots because we have a lot of non-conforming lots, no pun intended. Non-conforming lots make major modifications, such as teardowns or even major expansion of the house, extremely difficult. I've searched and found extremely limited numbers of teardowns on those non-conforming lots. The teardowns will occur where a small house of 6,000 square feet with a 6,000 square foot lot or greater gets knocked down for a larger house. This is because you need to dramatically increase the size of the house to make the economics of teardowns work. How many of these small houses exist in Arlington on conforming lots? In 2022, according to our same staff, 690 single-family homes exist that are less than 1,500 square feet, the classic Cape on a conforming lot. That number increases to 1,561, where the square footage is taken up to 1,850 square feet, and some have occurred on houses that large. However, if you go to the last slide, please. We'll go there in a second. Well, we'll get there in a second. My house is 1,800 square feet, and it is not being torn down. It's a classic split-level ranch. Again, according to the same Department of Planning and Community Development, we have permitted, on average, 27 teardowns per year between 2010 and 2022 for single-family, large-family construction, and not all of these are flips as we know them. Those numbers have not materially changed in the last 3 years. Will all new construction be two-family homes? Let's say 20 out of the 27 a year are conversions, and two-family homes are built to replace a single-family home. We're then talking about a net increase of 20 families a year in a town of 46,000 residents. Pardon me. Will 20 new homes a year materially increase the budget we have for our various services? I would ask you to consider the reverse. If we don't stop the rapid increase of housing costs, what will that do to the resulting cost of our town employee wages or simply our ability to hire town staff? I spoke to a school committee member who noted the cost of housing continues to outpace what the town can pay in wages, and this is after previous collective bargaining increases. When we have snow days, we're not canceling because of snow of only an inch. We're canceling because our teachers have an hour to drive here. In 2023, we amended our civil service hiring procedures to ease hiring of police officers from outside Arlington. Is that also due to the cost of housing in Arlington? We cannot ring-fence this issue. In 2015, we moved into our single-family home. We increased the town population by a net of 3 people. But the Finance Committee did not block us from living here. Instead, our neighbor brought us a cake. Finally, Arlington Housing, next slide, please. Oh, yes, this is good. Finally, Arlington houses have a median sales price per square foot of $581, meaning a house, big or small, is selling for an average of $581 a square foot. Condos, townhouses, median sales price of $577 a square foot, nearly identical. This says to me, if we can fit 2 homes into the same size, we have at least put some downward pressure on the increase in our home prices. And it also explains why only smaller homes are getting knocked down for larger homes. Given new home construction of at least 300 square foot, you need to expand the square footage substantially to make the economics work, even when sales prices exceed $2 million. Finally, the Arlington Affordable Housing Trust stated its goal of 100 units of affordable housing over the next few years. Further, the Arlington Housing Trust identified 10 Sunnyside Avenue for $33.5 million, containing 43 units of housing, with average bedrooms of 1.8 as a major effort in that goal. However, that cost is $800,000 per unit, which is all taxpayer subsidized. Unfortunately, housing is expensive. Separate from teardowns, what I'm interested as well is the conversations and actions, though, this could have for our existing homeowners with adult children they would like to move back to Arlington but can't afford it. By giving the opportunity to split the house, we can provide more multi-generational living as well as preserve the bonds established in the community by the existing homeowners. Major conversions, based on my review of the permitting, will still be very expensive, but still cheaper than buying a home, even now throughout Interstate 495. So why not see if this is possible and see if at least some homeowners that can have this discussion with their kids. Think about it as basically permitting a safer ADU with more equity and a little more flexibility. That's it. It's not going to lead to any more than just 2 units of housing. If my parents had the ability to split their house, there's a chance that we're still living there, and my parents are still part of their community, strengthening the fabric of that community as well. Further, we have more options for elderly care. We can take care of them, and they don't need to necessarily think about their assisted living arrangements as they are today. Back in Arlington, another deserving family can now live here. We would live with my parents. And that ripples through the entire housing market so that someone else gets a shot to live somewhere. We're seeing the impact of our shortages reverberate throughout the 495 corridor. That impacts traffic, congestion, and overall quality of life. Regarding existing homeowners, which the benefits I think are tremendous, some of you may say that's why we have ADUs. As I explained, ADUs may work in some homes, but not for every home. But say you're right. Then the result of this article will simply be to reduce the number of large McMansion teardowns that are being built today as a single-family homes selling for over $2 million a home. By building a few more units, I believe we can at least start to slow down our rate of increase in housing prices. Even condos priced above $1 million are still less than new houses priced at $2 million or above. Further, I believe we can benefit many existing residents to have meaningful conversations with their children to promote intergenerational living here in Arlington. Finally, I also believe this sends a strong signal to those who are trying to live here but can't right now, including many people who may work here as well. It says we're not done trying, experimenting, but we're trying to make this place more affordable for everyone. Please pass warrant Article 40. Thank you.
Thank you. And now invite up Beth Ann Freeman to introduce her amendment to the main motion. And can we display the Friedman amendment? Well, did you have slides, Ms. Friedman? Or no?
Excuse me?
Did you have slides to present? No, okay. So let's just show the PDF of the amendment. Ms. Friedman, you have the floor.
Beth Ann Friedman, Precinct 15. I'd like to move my amendment to Article 40. Or should I wait till after I present it?
Okay, we have a second. And actually, I just noted, I didn't notice this when I reviewed it the first couple of times, but if you scroll down, we could make this change administratively. There should be, I just noticed, because it's amending the main motion, could we show the table? Actually, let me pause this since, where it's inserting SP, which refers to allowed by special permit. It should also have a strike through of Y, which would mean, for R0 and R1, which would mean that's allowed by right, which is provided in the main motion, but it's not reflected here. So we can make that change administratively. My apologies for not catching that during review, but go ahead.
Okay. So basically, what my amendment does is change allowing the building of two-family or housing in R0, R1 by right to by special permit only. And this would address one of the main objections with this article in that there hasn't been appropriate outreach to the community to allow residents of Arlington to have input into whether they want this zoning article to pass or not. So now neighbors would have the opportunity to be informed when this someone is planning to build a two-family next door to them or in their vicinity, and decide whether it's something they want. Now, I happen to have a very small ranch on a relatively large lot, and so my property is a tear down. I mean, who wants a two-bedroom ranch these days? But if this article were to pass without a special permit, I can see developers essentially putting two McMansions on my property and still be within the confines of the zoning law. And I feel my neighbors should have some say as to whether they want that going on and going up in this street. So the other change was somewhat minor, but the definition of an R1 neighborhood was, what I struck was predominant, the change saying it was predominantly one family and two family to just predominantly one family, because that's, no matter how many two families you put up, it's still going to be predominantly two family. So I would urge you to support this amendment because it will give, as I said, neighbors an opportunity to really evaluate what they want going up next door and not be taken by surprise. But on the other hand, even though I put in this amendment, I hope you pass my amendment, but then defeat the amended article, because I really don't think that in the R1 and R0 districts, we should have the zoning change to allow two families. I don't think it's going to significantly increase the number of housing units there are. I don't think it's going to significantly make housing more affordable because, my house, as small as it is, given the land I have, will probably be sold for like $1.5 million. And even if a two-family were built there, each unit of that two-family, it's unlikely to go for less than, 1.5 or more likely $2 million. So I don't think it's going to make Arlington any more affordable. So thank you. And again, please support this amendment, just on the chance that this meeting might vote to approve Article 40, but then supporting my amendment to make it by two-family housing by special permit. If the main article is amended, I would vote down the main article. Thank you.
Great, thank you. That takes us to now the Mr. Goldsmith or Mr. Miller to present the Goldsmith-Miller commit motion. Okay. And do we have slides ready? Point of order? Oh, yes, someone left their handset on the podium here. Yep. Ms. Friedman? Okay. Mr. Goldsmith, you have the floor.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Gary Goldsmith, Precinct 11. Matt Miller and I have submitted a motion to create a fact-finding committee to study some of the concerns that folks have raised about Article 40 and to analyze the available data and to report back to town meeting. Next, please. So we can make a well-considered decision about two-family by right. So what is a motion to commit? It's simply a tool to refer a motion to a committee for further study. It is not our intention to tell town meeting how to vote, but to clarify what the issues are and to find answers where they exist to help us make an informed decision. We hope that this is a good choice of membership, and we hope that they will take our charge seriously. They are to research and report, not decide. That responsibility remains with the town meeting in the future. We assume that representatives of other relevant groups, committees, and departments will be consulted as needed. Next, please. We do not necessarily oppose, next one also, please. Next slide. We do not necessarily oppose two-family by right, and we recognize the urgency of the need, but we lack hard facts about its long-term effects on our neighborhoods and our town. Next, please. Next one as well, please. Next slide. So there is a severe housing shortage in Massachusetts, especially in the Boston metro area. This is a serious problem. It's got consequences socially and environmentally, and we are not alone in this. This is a problem across the United States. Next, please. Adequate housing is not the same as affordable housing, and Article 40 only addresses the first of these issues. Unlike many of our neighbors, we have no empty buildable land, and most of our town's revenue comes from real estate taxes. Next, please. So essentially, the same article was proposed in June 2022, and it failed, and here we are again. There has been some name-calling and finger-pointing and accusations of bad faith and bad intentions involved in this discussion. These do not promote a good decision. There has been a lot of all-or-nothing thinking, a focus on the need or the objections to the exclusion of everything else. We need a broader scope. We want more regional housing, but we also want a balance of other things, including trees, traffic safety, schools, and the town's financial situation. Much of the discussion seems to have been based on opinions, assumptions, guesses, and suppositions, not the serious investigation that it deserves. I'll just list quickly some of the issues that I've abstracted from 70 pages of Arlington List posts. Other speakers, fortunately for all of us, I don't have 3 hours to do this. I'll just list some of these issues.
You have about 3 minutes.
Other speakers will no doubt elaborate on some of these issues. So, next please. How many cars will the new residents need? How much traffic will be added to residential streets? Where will those cars park? Will fire engines and ambulances be able to get through? 25% of the streets in Arlington are private ways. What about wear and tear on roadways? Next, please. What about water and sewer? A 15,000 square foot lot offers a lot of possibilities for an ADU. Will there be 8 trash cans and recycle bins at these locations? Is there capacity in the schools for new students in these areas? The town is spending nearly $1 million for a safe sidewalk project near the Stratton Elementary School. There are very few sidewalks in the R0 district. Next, please. What about affordability? Now, builders will build what people want and what makes financial sense. Has anyone asked them what they want to do? Is a 2-family McMansion better than a 1-family McMansion? How many trees are removed? How much new impervious surface? What about setbacks? New structures are indeed better insulated and all electric. That's a good thing. Housing stock turns over and gets more expensive, and older residents are priced out of town. Next, please. This is not a modest change when somewhere between 50 and 60% of Arlington is R1 and R0. Does Article 40 meet the spirit, the letter of the zoning law, but not the spirit? And we're changing a use table, not a zoning application. Has there been adequate notification of town residents? Do duplexes pay less in taxes than the cost of providing town services? What will happen with MBTA communities? What about the new master plan? Aspiration is good, but hope is not a reliable strategy. Some events are, in fact, low probability, but have major consequences. And finally, there have been similar approaches in Maine, Vermont, California, and other states. How have some of those turned out? So this is a major redirection for Arlington, but we are approaching this inflection without adequate information. I mean, just look how much your community has changed in your lifetimes. We owe it to each other and to our children to think deeply about what we are proposing. Many questions have been raised, few solid answers so far, and we propose trying to find some of those answers. For now, I plan to vote no on Article 40 because the issue has not been properly considered and the proposed solution is incomplete.
Mr. Goldsman, did you make your motion yet?
Oh, and therefore I think I did at the beginning, but we offer a motion. And with that in mind, in fact, we offer
do we have a second before we run it? Okay.
We offer a motion to commit. We seek information, not advocacy. We hope to help facilitate a wise choice by town meeting, not make that choice ourselves. There may not be clear answers for every problem, and the final decision will still be hard, but at least we will know that we have done our due diligence. I hope that you will support this effort to get us to a safe and reasonable decision that will address our social responsibilities.
Okay, we're at time.
And allow us to look back at our town.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. We'll take Joanne Cullinan next to offer her motion. That's a light, I think. It's the tall one. You have to pull down. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you, Joanne Cullinane, Precinct 21. I guess I have to move this somehow?
Yeah, it's best to do it in the beginning so you don't forget.
I move my motion to amend the motion to commit under Article 40.
And we have a second. It is now pending before us with the other two motions, three actually, the main motion. Go ahead.
Okay. The Cullinan amendment to the motion to commit amends the language of the Goldsmith-Miller motion to include better representation on the committee that would study the issue and to include a process for public participation and engagement. Article 40 has stimulated debate at precinct meetings and in fleeting online exchanges, though it is just starting to percolate down to the street level. There is a huge disconnect between these spheres. Most residents remain unaware that such a proposal is before us. However, recently I've received numerous emails from constituents asking me to vote against 40. They have concerns and are upset that the town would contemplate such a large change without informing them or including them in the discussion and decision. The town created a public process when drafting an MBTA Act overlay, and we just voted for a process whereby the terms of an affordable housing overlay will be studied and then presented to affected residents. As such, we recognize that the town has the ability and the duty to set up a process whereby the question of whether or not to allow duplexes on all R0 and R1 lots can be evaluated thoroughly and residents' input solicited. Residents' concerns are many and they are valid. We must take them seriously. They are concerned this would incentivize ever more tear downs, that modest homes will be lost, and they are concerned about rising real estate valuations and taxes. They also worry about school capacity, safe streets, and tree loss. While there is a motion to commit before us, it calls for a study group without representation from the committees best able to study the impact such a zoning change could have upon our finances, schools, traffic, parking, pedestrian safety, and trees. For this reason, I ask you to amend the Goldsmith-Miller motion to commit to add individuals from the Finance, School, Tree, and Transportation Advisory Committees to the body that would evaluate the issue. These were chosen because they represent the committees with expertise in the areas that residents express the greatest concern about. This is not to say that other individuals, such as from the DPW, cannot be consulted without being on the committee proper. Those individuals can always be consulted. In addition, my amendment adds a public process so that residents would have the chance they deserve to weigh in on a change that could have more immediate and far-reaching implications than either the MBTA Act or the Affordable Housing Overlay. There are 8,000 single-family lots in Arlington, and developers can outbid anyone who simply wants to buy a small, older, modest home. Especially if their goal is to create 2 duplexes and flip that property. Debate over this article risks tearing the town apart in the absence of any genuine forum where people can voice and share their concerns and opinions. This is damaging to our larger community and to the public trust. If a citizen cannot hold public hearings and do the mailings that are required, then they should not propose such huge changes, in my view. The public process, if handled like the MBTA Community Act process, would not necessitate mailings for each hearing. Mailings would come at the end if an article is recommended at the end of the process. As an example of how trust in each other and in the town has been eroded, I have taken some snippets from some comments that were shared with all of us from a petition that I'm told has now over 950 signatures. And these are just some snippets, not particularly inflammatory, very reasonable. has not had enough community input as a major zoning change and concerned about unintended consequences, including escalating land values. This process is going much too fast, and these are two different comments, without much input from Arlington residents. Another one, not one of my neighbors is aware of what this article means. The language in the warrant that went out in the mail was too confusing, dense, legalese. Town meeting should be fair to the community by inviting Arlington residents to offer their opinions about Article 40 and listen to them. Please vote yes to a robust and democratic process that builds public trust. Please vote yes on the Cullinane amendment to the motion to commit under Article 40. If no motion to commit for further study or to include a process for public engagement is passed, then I urge you to vote no on Article 40 itself. Thank you.
Thank you. So it is 9:32. Before we take a break, just to let you know that when we come back, I'm going to give a brief overview of, like a procedural overview of how I expect the votes to go. That could change depending on motions that may be made during debate, and we'll have to figure that out on the fly. So we'll run through that after the break, and then we'll proceed to the speaker queue. And so I believe we have some snacks that are available for sale on the left here. So we'll see you in 10 minutes. Okay, so I'm going to explain the sequence of votes. Can we go to the last slide in the deck? There we go. So this is the sequence of procedures that are pending in front of us now. This could change if more motions come in from the floor, and we'll deal with those as they come. So we've already introduced the motions in the order of first the main motion, the Friedman amendment to the main motion, then the Goldsmith-Miller motion to commit, followed by the Cullinane amendment to the motion to commit. And then now we're going to debate all of these motions, and other motions might come from the floor, as I said. And then now this is based, now the C section here is A, B, C. When we get to voting, after debate has either been terminated or everyone who wishes to speak speaks, one way or another, debate's going to end at some point, and then we'll proceed to votes. And based on what's pending in front of us now, this is how the votes would go. And again, this could change if new motions come in, like another amendment or another motion to commit or a substitute motion, right? Could make things more interesting. I think it'd be hard to substitute within 20 words, but people can get creative. So based on the motions we have pending in front of us, we'll vote these in the reverse order from what was presented. That's not always the case involving, like sometimes there's other cases, like depending on the ranks of motion, which I really don't want to get into right now. But these motions on the left that were already introduced will be voted on in reverse order. Because they're all operating at different ranks, so the order gets inverted. The Cullinane commit amendment would have to go first, so to seek whether it's going to amend the Goldsmith-Miller commit motion or not, and then we'll vote on the commit amendment, the Goldsmith-Miller motion to commit. If that passes, the article is done. It's disposed of at that point. There's no further voting on the article unless it gets resurrected through a motion of reconsideration, and that's a whole other thing, which I'm not going to get into. If the vote on the motion to commit fails, then we'll continue voting as we ordinarily do on articles where we have a main motion and an amendment to the main motion, right? So then we'll proceed to the Friedman amendment to see whether the meeting wishes to amend the main motion, and then finally the main motion itself, which is the only 2/3 vote across all these votes. All the other votes, 1, 2, and 3 listed here, are all majority vote motions. So if anyone gets hopelessly confused at any point, you can raise a point of order if you have a question about the order of the meeting, like the sequence of the procedures or what we're voting on. Now, just to be clear, an appropriate point of order would be about the order, not just like sequencing order, but like what's in order in terms of like scope or confusion about what it is that we're voting on from a procedural perspective. It's not an appropriate, like a point of order would not be an appropriate thing to do just to ask questions about the kind of the impact or consequences of a vote. You can only ask really procedural questions through a point of order. Okay, so let's now show the speaker queue. And there's a lot of speakers here. Sometimes, especially when there's more contentious debates or debate over contentious issues, that this goes on for a while, and especially when there's a lot of speakers in the queue, I may take some liberties. For instance, like if we get a lot of speakers that are speaking on one side of the debate, I might take speakers out of order so that the meeting is getting a greater diversity of perspectives and not just hearing the same arguments. Also, there's also a larger point there, which is don't just keep making the same arguments as previous speakers. It's unlikely that everything that everyone has to say here is materially different and unique from everyone else on the list. So you can remove yourself from the list if you wish, or you could shout out pass if someone's essentially already covered the same points that you were going to make. And just getting up there at the podium to say, well, I agree with such and such speaker before me, that's not really a totally appropriate use of the speaker time, if that's all you have to say, because the official way to do that is just vote a certain way when we get to voting. So without further ado, let's take I'll start by taking the speakers in order, and if I need to use my discretion as moderator to like balance out the debate, if it gets really lopsided, because I know that there's views all over this issue, lots of perspectives on both sides of the debate, and it's not even just a linear spectrum. There's more dimension to it than that as well. So without further ado, we'll first take Remy Macaluso, followed by Jennifer Latowski. Point of order? Yeah.
Barry Jasmine, Precinct 18. Mr. Moderator, my name was previously 14th on the list to speak. It is now not. I wonder if anyone else's name was removed from the queue.
I did hear a couple of reports from folks during the break that their name was up there and then it disappeared, and it's unclear how that happened. I apologize. I'm not sure how technically that did happen, but there have been multiple reports of that. So all the more reason to not take the order that you see here as the literal order that we're going to take, so there might be jumping around to try to even things out, and apologies for that uncertainty. Okay. Ms. Macaluso, you have the floor.
All right. Hi, I'm Remy Macaluso from Precinct 3. I'm trans, and I'm poly, and I'm queer. The town of Arlington generally likes to think of itself as being queer-friendly, and when compared to a lot of the rest of the country, we really are. However, just because we cleared that very low bar doesn't absolve ourselves of our responsibility to critically consider the potential accidental homophobic impacts of our policies, especially when those same policies are occasionally deliberately used for their homophobic impacts in other parts of the rest of the country. Family-based zoning, including single-family zoning and multifamily zoning, legally impose the straight, often white, nuclear family as the expectation of what it means to be a family. This legal framework works fine for straight families and even for some monogamous gay families that can conform to those legal standards of what it means to be a family. However, many families, especially poly families, ace families, queer found families, and multi-generational families, do not conform to that structure and cannot necessarily fit in buildings not designed for us. Single-family zoning is the worst offender of this. Vast swaths of this country make it fully illegal for any family that does not conform to the structure of the straight nuclear family to build a home there. As someone who does not conform to that straight nuclear family mold, that level of pervasive exclusion is a constant background murmur in any discussion I have about what my future will look like. Article 40 does not solve this. It is a local bill, and this is a pervasive national issue of bigotry and exclusion. But Article 40 is an important step towards solving this issue here in Arlington. By allowing duplexes in residential zones, Article 40 adds one new category of wall configuration inside of homes in some parts of Arlington. It does not change the spatial requirements. It does not change the parking requirements. It does not change the tree felling requirements. It does not change any of those things. It just changes where you are allowed to have walls and doors and kitchens inside your own home. This will mean that some, not all, but some non-nuclear families will be able to build the homes that they need in order to live in those zones. But Article 40 does one other thing that I think is far more important, because the places that it affects are the very last places in Arlington where the exclusion imposed by single-family zoning still applies. By getting rid of the last of that exclusion is a declaration that the bigotry and exclusion based on family shape and size have no place here, and that Arlington is welcoming for everyone. I urge you to vote yes on Article 40, to vote no on the amendments, the motions to amend, the motions to commit, the motions to amend and commit, then commit and amend. We don't need a delay. We don't need to water things down. Just vote yes on Article 40. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. We'll take Jennifer Letowski next, followed by Arthur Prokosh.
Jennifer Letowski, Precinct 3. So I do support Article 40. I think we have such a housing crisis here and such an affordability crisis. This is one of many approaches we need to take simultaneously to try and solve this. One single tactic, one single strategy isn't enough, but we have to work on them together. But one of the concerns that I hear frequently is that, well, we can't increase density until we fix the transit, or until we get safer streets, or until we do this. And I really share these concerns. My kid was one of the ones who was struggling with the inconsistent service of the 77 to get up to Ottoson Middle School. I live on a street, Oxford Street, that has some real problems with cut-through traffic, et cetera. There was a young girl who was struck by a car near the Leslie Ellis School a couple of years ago. But we can't work on these issues one at a time and make one a precondition before we start tackling the next one. They're all multi-year efforts, and progress is slow on them. So we need to tackle them simultaneously. It doesn't all happen in town meeting. I know the other concern is that we need a comprehensive plan. We need to handle that. And I agree. I want to see these things looked at in sync. That's part of what the AMP Up survey and Arlington master plan project going on right now is all about. So please do take part, participate, fill out the survey. But in terms of what comes to us at town meeting, it's going to be one at a time. That's how we do these things. That's how the legislature and the funding works. So if we are interested in zoning, this is where a lot of the action happens. If you are interested in street safety, the action doesn't happen here. It happens at the Transportation Advisory Committee, or TAC. It happens with some of the volunteer groups, like Everywhere Arlington Livable Streets, which I've been a member of for some time. If you are interested in affordable housing, the affordable housing overlay is really where the action's going to be. We have to do these things simultaneously. In addition, one really can reinforce and cause positive feedback for the other. The 10 Sunnyside project in East Arlington is, I think, a great example of this. Because of the Affordable Housing Trust Fund, we were able to have enough money to make that happen in conjunction with town grants. Because we passed the operating override, we had enough staff time to actually apply for the grants and get some of this working. And because that project is going on, that gave some of the rationale and the incentive for the Broadway redesign project and putting safer crosswalks and bike lanes in that project, at least for those of us involved in some of the transportation advocacy, that's what we're going to be pushing for. So if you care about these other issues, there are other ways and venues where some of the action is. Come join them. But in the meantime, while we are here at town meeting, let's act on the ones that we can, which is allow a little bit more housing for a few more families to be built in Arlington. Let's do them simultaneously, because otherwise we'll be lucky if we see any progress in 60 years. Thank you very much. Please join me in supporting Article 40 for action now, not pushing it off to committee for another year. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Let's take Arthur Prokosh next.
Yes, hello, Arthur Prokosh, Precinct 4. I've been a town meeting member for 3 years and a resident for 10. I support Article 40 as a small step in the right direction. I'm here telling you about it because of an Ottoson middle schooler. A friend's kid interviewed me for civics class because I'm an adult who's active in the community. This was in February when it became clear just how viciously the federal government was damaging our country and itself. To be honest, my first instinct was to quit town meeting and dive completely into some national fight. But then I started answering this 8th grader's questions. What social issues are most important to me, they asked. Defending trans and queer rights, protecting ourselves and our surroundings from climate change. What are you doing locally to advance these causes, then? I took a beat. It became pretty clear when I put together my answer. Having housing nearby lets us open our hearts. Queer folks and families with trans kids from around the country need homes now to escape hostile states. Increasingly over the next few decades, families from the South and other parts of the country will increasingly need to move away from hurricanes and extreme heat to relocate to climate havens like Massachusetts. So what am I doing locally? One thing that I'm doing is I'm working to add more housing to Arlington to help more people live safely now and in the future. Because living here is great and I want to share it. And what we do at town meeting connects, even if in small ways, to national needs. Thank you, Ottoson 8th grader. Please vote for Article 40 and against all subsidiary motions.
Thank you. Let's see, and the reason why I didn't announce the next speaker is I wanted some latitude in case I needed to balance debate here. We've had 3 speakers generally in support of the main motion under Article 40. Can we clear the speakers who've already spoken so it's more clear, especially if I'm going to end up jumping around here? So I'm going to run through some names in the list. If any of you that I call your name wish to speak generally in opposition to the main motion under Article 40, then feel free to step up to the microphone. And once we kind of balance a little bit, then we can run back through the list in order. Colin Bennell. Speaking in support. Okay. Michael Ruderman. Speaking in favor of the motion to commit. Okay. It's a sufficiently different view.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Michael Ruderman, Precinct 9. Motion to commit is not common for this body. It certainly is well known to those of us who thumb through Robert's Rules of Orders for fun reading. There are some. Interesting things can come out of it. I would like to speak to 3 things. Oh, a very quick question, Mr. Moderator, before I get into my remarks. Can someone answer for me the question of how many persons of legal age there are in the town of Arlington? Roughly.
Like 18 and older? Legal age in what sense? Like voting age? 33 or 34,000 based on registered voters.
Approximately 34,000 based on registered voters. Thank you, Mr. Jameson. Okay, I will speak to you about 3 things. I will speak to you about ducks. I will speak to you about parliamentary motions, and I will speak to you about good intentions. First, in ducks, we all understand that if it walks like a zoning change, and it quacks like a zoning change, the public will perceive it not to be a duck, but will perceive it to be a zoning change. I am told repeatedly, it's not a zoning change, it's a change of use. Therefore, we don't have to go through the very...
You have a point of order? Is it a... It is a zoning change to the zoning bylaw. Mr. Ruderman, proceed.
I'm told by the proponents of Article 40 that the broad, extensive, and yes, in some ways, expensive process of notifying and alerting the public to it was not called for. I would disagree. Referring this question to a committee would obviate that problem. Was it something that we should have pushed a notice out to very affirmatively? Was it something that, just alluding to in the mailing of the warrant to town residents was good enough? We could debate that back and forth. Was it well-intentioned? Was it a mistake? Is it a way of trying to get around procedures? If we take the time to refer this question to committee, we settle that. And we not only place the question in the hands of people that the drafters of the motions to commit feel have some expertise to bear on the matter, but it also invites the public in to be heard. Yes, I've heard a lot of comments from constituents. I think I've had 3 emails. Now, admit it, getting 3 emails on any article in any town meeting session, that's a lot of interest. I think there's a lot more interest out there of people that want to express their questions, their doubts, their anxieties, their concerns, their good advice. And that's the parliamentary motion that I wish we would all take up tonight. I ask you to vote in favor of the motion to commit as offered originally, and then as amended by Ms. Cullinan. I believe she broadens out the breadth of experience and viewpoints outside of what many people who look at us as the insiders, as we're the town hall insiders, we know what's going on. I believe Ms. Cullinan's amendment opens those doors and invites in people who can help and add constructive information and expertise to this. And I reject any argument that says it's too difficult to conduct this way. We're a municipal corporation with roughly $200 million budget, all in. Schools, non-schools, everything. $200 million. And it would cost about 10 grand, we're told, to do a mailing. Well, I think democracy is worth the 10 grand. And with 33 or 34,000 persons of eligibility to serve on a town committee, or to be the designee of a town committee, or to be a citizen volunteer and to participate on behalf of a town committee, I don't think we have too few people and too little expertise at our disposal. Yeah, it's work. Democracy's worth the work. And so I ask you to accept the good intentions of these motions to commit. They are not a stall. They are not, as I read in one posting today, a committee. That I know from university administration, committees are the gulags where good ideas are sent to die and never be heard from again. Let us give each other the benefit of the belief of good intentions. And I believe referring this question to a committee, as first proposed by Mr. Goldsmith and Mr. Miller, and as amended by Ms. Cullinan, would be a good intention and would yield a good result. I ask you to vote for the motion to commit and for the amendment of the motion to commit.
Thank you. Actually, I have a question myself, which I meant to ask after the introduction of the Cullinan commit amendment, which is a question for either Ms. Cullinan or maybe the redevelopment board. The provision that, like in items H and I under the committee membership, that the appointees, I believe of the select board and of the moderator, reside in precincts that are primarily R0, R1. Is that like a readily knowable constraint? Like, is that easy enough to figure out, or is, okay, it's not, okay. It's not going to be a technical problem. Okay. Okay, so let's go back to the speaker queue, and I'll take a couple more speakers who are not speaking primarily in support of the main motion, and then we'll circle back. David Pretzer?
In support.
Okay. Rebecca Gruber? Gordon Jameson? Sure, come on up. I promise you someday we'll have a way of requesting to speak that'll not have this awkward process. But Mr. Jameson, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Gordon Jameson, Precinct 12. So I too have been contacted by many of my constituents, like you, the most in over 20 years of being a member of.
Microphone, please.
The most in being a member of over 20 years. I won't touch the notification process. I'm sure the town clerk would be able to tell us that the notification process and the ARB process for hearings was done in a legal fashion. What the question I want to ask is, what problem are we trying to solve? Are we trying to solve the world's problem or Arlington's problem? Maybe they overlap, but I'm going to focus on trying to solve our problems. As Mr. Levy said, and I've heard many times on the floor here and in other discussions, the children who grow up here into promising young adults educated by our wonderful education system would like to stay in Arlington. People would like to age in Arlington. People would like to maybe have their parents come so they could take care of them. And maybe at length, the parents move into the ADU that I'm going to describe in a second, and the children live in the big house. And or we are able to house town and school employees. So that led me to do something I had never done before. I'm not really a zoning aficionado. I look at the numbers a lot. But I looked at the numbers here. So there's basically three sizes that I can look at. I'm going to take the middle one. So R0 is 9,000 square feet. You can build a lot on that. My lot is a 6,000 conforming lot, 60 feet in the front, 100 deep, which is an R1 conforming lot. But in my neighborhood, up near Robbins Farm Park, there's a heck of a lot of non-conforming 4,000 square foot lots that have houses on them. I'm going to look at the R1. I spoke with the Director of Inspectional Services, Mr. Champa, and he clued me into the fact that really what he looks at is setbacks and open usable space. So if you pretend a piece of bread, and you have to have 30% open space, that takes off 30 in the back, 25 setback and 10 on each side, you end up with a maximum footprint of 1,800 square feet. And you can build that up 2.5 stories. Following my notes here. I spoke with Mr. Champa and Ms. Stanberry, and in particular Mr. Klein in the back recently, if you've maxed out that footprint and you've used all the open usable space, there's no way that you can impinge upon that open space to build an ADU outside of that original structure. You can try, but you're not going to get the SP or the variance. So what can we do with this 1,800 square foot footprint? Like I said, you could do 1,800 over 1,800 and a basement that's 1,800. But think back to Mr. Levy's picture of the houses.
That's pronounced Levy, by the way.
Pardon?
It's pronounced Levy.
Levy? Okay. Did I say that wrong? I'm sorry. My apologies. Rather than the 1,800 on top, you potentially could picture that either of those structures as having 1,350 on top of 1,350 and 450 upon top of 450. That would give you the 2,700 feet on one side and the 900 ADU on the other. So my point is, maybe and I talked to Ms. Stanberry and Mike Champi, as long as there could be a basement under that, as long as it's not finished space or a garage. So my point is, maybe we already have what we want. You know, if you look at the two-family houses, the classic two-family houses like Mr. Klein lives on in Precinct 10, just one street or two streets over from my house on Situate. I forget the name of the street, but Those classic things were, the first floor was either elderly family, and the second floor and third floors are often the younger children and their families. We're trying to replicate that. You know, my model would replicate that, and that would provide for the ability to have, to address the needs of Arlington's needs. So I think that what we should be focusing on is figuring out all the ways we can promote ADUs to develop this and get the essential ADU-based two-family housing using existing zoning that is both ours and the state law. Now, I've talked about R1 and R0s. I think people should be building the equivalent of carriage houses, left, right, and center, because you can build that and you can have either children, you can rent it out, or you can have your family, children live there, or as you get older, you could live in the carriage house. And you could either rent out the main house, same thing with the R1, and if you ever moved into the ADU as the owner of the property, you'd have a list a mile long of people that would want to rent the larger structure. So I think we have what we need, we just need to figure out how to promote it. I defer to the ARB when they say this is not the time for a new committee in this regard. And I think that having speak to Ms. Sandberry before, after leaving from a previous meeting for the Board of Assessors. Oh yes, I am on the Board of Assessors and I'm speaking as a private citizen here. I will be impacted if you commit, either way. Because I'll be on, I most likely will be the designee. So I think we should promote ADUs and reject all their other motions. Thank you very much, Mr. Moderator.
Okay, thank you. Okay, I'll continue running through names, looking for one more speaker who will not be speaking predominantly in favor before we circle back. Let's see, Paul Baer.
Paul Baer, Precinct 13. Thank you, Mr. Moderator. I have a question. Mr. Levy showed a bunch of issues that were brought up. My constituents have brought up a bunch of issues. I'm interested, Mr. Moderator, in how many of these issues and which issues the redevelopment board considered in detail when they decided to support this motion.
So they certainly wouldn't be privy to like the issues that residents who've contacted you have raised, basically like the issues that that the petitioner presented on?
Well, for instance, did they look at water and sewer as issues? Did they look at traffic? Did they look at how financially it will affect the town going forward in supplying services and in paying for those services?
Okay. So anyone from the redevelopment board, is that the sort of questions that were reviewed at the redevelopment board? Does the redevelopment board look at the potential impacts? Because it could be zero if no one actually takes advantage of the new uses, but it could be quite large too. Mr. Revelak?
Steve Revelak, Arlington Redevelopment Board. This is the third time this particular proposal has come forward to the Redevelopment Board, and I would say that we spent more time looking at impacts during the first two, particularly the first time it came up in 2020. At the time in 2020, staff provided a breakdown of parcels that could be redeveloped because they were conforming, parcels that were too small to be redeveloped, parcels that were under historic preservation restrictions, parcels that were subject to conservation restrictions, and basically the gist of it is the number 8,000 drops significantly. I do have numbers at my chair. I just didn't walk over, but I'm happy to do so.
And were those previous proposals like essentially the same, or expected to have the same impacts?
They proposed to add two-family and duplexes by right in R1 and R2 without any changes to the dimensional regulations for the district. At the time, in 2020, we had just finished Staff had just finished conducting a study of home replacements, basically tear downs and rebuilds over the previous 10 years, and our average was roughly 27 a year. And I think this past year, that number was even smaller, but but basically taking that as sort of the basis of expectations, even if all 27 of them, or even if it went a little above 27 and all of them turned into duplexes, which is just pushing the envelope, you'd be looking at an additional like maybe 24 homes a year, and as a percentage of Arlington's 20,000 residential dwellings, it's a very small percentage. It's a small tail to wag a large dog. Thank you, Mr. Moderator.
Mr. Bear?
Okay, and I guess there's another question. I'm going to go back and read what the ARB has already written. I will say to the ARB that if this body votes to commit this to a committee, it's because this body representing the citizens of Arlington thinks it's important that the ARB and these other people who will be appointed to the committee thinks that it's important for this issue to be looked at in more detail for another year. So even if it means that the Department of Planning and Community Development will have to spend some time supporting the effort, it's because the citizens with us as representatives think it's important that they do so. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Let's go back to Colin Bennell. You have a point of order? Mr. Kepline? Not from a point of order, but from the speaker queue, it could be offered. Yep. Colin Bennell?
Colin Bennell, Precinct 5. During these debates around density and housing, we've heard a lot about homeowners and would-be homeowners, and properly so. But I'd like to talk for a moment about a group that gets discussed quite a bit less often in these debates: renters. I am a renter, and my partner and I are incredibly blessed to have wonderful landlords. But not everyone is so fortunate. In my professional life, I am an attorney representing tenants in disputes with their landlords. This has given me a front row seat to the real impact of the housing crisis in Greater Boston, even as I am only able to represent the smallest fraction of the people who call me every day looking for help. Every day, I represent clients and take calls from would-be clients with truly harrowing stories. I've taken calls from tenants whose rent went up 40 to 50% in a single year. I've taken calls from tenants whose landlords refused to undertake maintenance because they knew the current market gave them all the power. What's the tenant going to do? Move? I've even heard from tenants whose landlords attempted to leverage their tenants' financial vulnerability in order to sexually exploit them. The argument that comes up that that's why we should build more affordable housing, meaning public or subsidized housing, doesn't address the problem. It's correct, we should, but it doesn't address the problem. It's not just people who meet eligibility standards for housing subsidies or housing programs that are being crushed under this market. Plenty of tenants have incomes too high to qualify, but are still exactly one paycheck away from falling behind, or they already have. Further, the certification process for housing programs can itself be an opportunity for humiliation and harassment, as I have unfortunately also seen. I've heard stories from potential clients of housing authority employees leveraging their power to punish tenants they don't like, and the housing crisis makes these tenants even more vulnerable and terrified. And if someone has, due to all of these factors, been evicted, then not only are they going to have a much harder time finding another place to live, since evictions are public record, but in a perverse catch-22, they are then ineligible for affordable housing programs. And whatever rights tenants have to fight this relies upon a housing court system in which, per the Supreme Judicial Court of Massachusetts, more than 90% of tenants lack legal representation, while a supermajority of landlords do have attorneys. It is a deeply unlevel playing field. It is incredibly easy to imagine how any change to the status quo could cause us loss or harm down the road. Evidence demonstrates humans are psychologically built to prioritize avoiding loss over realizing potential benefit. The status quo involves devastating loss to many. Lives are being ruined now by a broken, dysfunctional housing market. The people seeking my representation are finding themselves suddenly unable to afford apartments that they have lived in for decades. They are unable to find replacement apartments that they can afford. And what lives they have built for themselves have come crashing down around them. Obviously, Article 40 is not going to make these problems just go away, unfortunately. We got here through decades of restrictive zoning by most, if not all, of the towns in the greater Boston area, including Arlington. It's going to take time, and it's going to take sustained effort by communities. So if this isn't going to single-handedly fix it, why bother? Two quotes come to mind. The first is a quote I first heard from my partner, and it comes from the Talmud. "It is not your obligation to complete the work, but neither are you free to desist from it." The second, less lofty quote is, "If you find yourself in a hole, the first thing to do is stop digging." Let's stop digging and begin getting this region out of the hole we are in. Please vote yes on Article 40 and no on all subsidiary motions. Thank you.
Thank you. Let's skip ahead to, can we remove Mr. Jameson from the queue, please? Brendan O'Day, do you wish to speak not in general support of the, okay, all right.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Brendan O'Day, Precinct 14. I'm against Article 40 for the following reason. I believe a diverse set of housing options is desirable in Arlington, and the elimination of R1 and R0 zones would get rid of single-family houses. At a recent town meeting event, I gave the example of our small family as we progress through different stages in our lives. In our late 20s, we moved to East Arlington into a 2-bedroom apartment in a 2-family house where we had tandem parking with our downstairs neighbor. We loved it. We loved the 2-bedroom apartment, we loved the 2-family house, we loved our downstairs neighbors. Almost all the housing in our neighborhood, we were on Varnum Street, right near the diner, almost all of the housing in our neighborhood, as far as the eye could see, was 2- or 3-family housing. We had our first child, and we put him in our 2nd bedroom. Worked great. That was great except for the tandem parking, and we loved having one car, loved the Hardy School. We loved the walkable neighborhood. We commuted by bike or walking to Alewife. Our car barely left the driveway. We walked to the Fox Library and Magnolia Playground a lot. We spent 10 years in that apartment. After a few years, we had a 2nd child and brought bunk beds. We bought bunk beds. Worked great. Then we had preschool, shopping for 4, soccer practice across town. Our car got more use. A few years later, we had our 3rd child who slept in our bedroom as we explored options. She turned 3 in that bedroom as we looked for a house. In our late 30s, with too many children for 2 bedrooms, we wanted a single-family house where we could take our car out to get milk without asking our downstairs neighbor, "Can we please take our car out to get milk?" Yes, we know it's late. Kelwyn Manor in East Arlington was our ideal. It was perfect, would have been great. It's got all single-family houses, but they never turn over. There are no houses there. We hope to stay in Arlington where our first 2 were making their ways through the public schools, the soccer club, the Boys and Girls Club. We coached youth soccer and lacrosse and swimming. We all made good friends that we didn't want to lose. I was involved briefly as the president of the Arlington Education Enrichment Fund, and my wife was playing hockey with other moms at the rink. If there were no single-family homes in Arlington, we'd have gone out of town. Our good friends from Varnum Street went to Reading, for example, following the same trajectory. They had a 3rd child, they needed more space. Other good friends did move up near the water tower. They had been on Varnum Street. They moved to a single-family house. They had 2 children. They wanted more space. Their children are on the basketball team now at the high school. That's why I oppose this article. Small families sometimes grow and may have different wants and needs as they do. And I don't want everybody to have to move to Lexington or Reading or Melrose to find a single-family house option. Thank you.
Thank you. Let's circle back to the top to David Pretzer.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. David Pretzer, Precinct 17. We've heard a lot of perspectives on this article. We've heard that people, various things that people have heard from their constituents. I do wonder how many town meeting members have actively reached out to the constituents, and especially the renters in their precincts. I think a lot of voices don't necessarily often get heard in these things. And I have personal connections that give me a particular perspective on this article. My aunt has lived in this area for decades with family history going back nearly 100 years. She lived in Arlington as a renter and recently was forced out of Arlington due to rent increases. People who rent often can't have the housing stability that allows someone to stay in the same schools, stay in the same town meeting, et cetera, that that many of us enjoy here. But she was a part of our community. She had friendships. She had school connections. She did community service in the community, and there just weren't housing options that would enable her to stay in town. In Arlington, we have refugees. We have support for refugees, support for queer people with housing insecurity. It's not only that we don't have enough places for them, we actually have legal restrictions that prevent a homeowner, such as myself, from cleanly setting aside having the flexibility to create housing for people that we might want to create housing for. I think this Article 40 is going to have a relatively small impact in practice. We've heard from the ARB that the number of properties it applies to is much smaller than the total number of R0 and R1 because of non-conforming lots. And like we've seen, due to market demands, it's not like developers are going to try to turn everything into two-family. We've seen many conversions in Arlington and other places where a two-family has been turned into a single-family because that's what the market demands. This is creating an opportunity for homeowners to better meet their needs and the needs of their communities. It has no risk of dramatically transforming all single-family homes into two-family homes. And we've seen with the ADU measure and with the MBTA communities that, they create some positive change slowly over time without any incentives or, dimensional or otherwise to create two-family homes. This is not going to result in some sort of gold rush that, dramatically changes the town. And I think what we need to think about when we think about the character of our town, the character of our neighborhoods, is who are we referring to when we talk about neighborhood character? Are we referring to the buildings, keeping the buildings the same, or are we referring to our neighbors? Article 40 will let us help our neighbors remain in town, create room for more neighbors to enjoy the things we enjoy about town, and I think it strengthens our communities and moves things in the right direction. This is also not a new idea. As we've heard, it's been discussed many times before. It was the #1 recommendation in the Housing Production Plan from 2022, that there's already been extensive public process that went into the Housing Production Plan and other the previous discussions of this. At some point, I think, we need to move forward, and I think the virtue of this plan is in its simplicity. We don't need a committee to come up with a complicated proposal. We have a simple, obvious, or a simple, straightforward step forward that we should take. I'd also like to ask the Director of Planning and Community Development, if I may, if this article does not pass this year, would it be possible for Planning and Community Development to look into some of these factual questions without needing to create a separate committee specific to this article?
So, question, just so I understand, Mr. Pretzer, if there's essentially no action taken under this article, would the Department of Planning and Community Development take any initiative to look into any of these issues?
Yeah, would it be possible for Planning and Community Development to provide more information in the future without referring this to a committee?
Director Ricker, can you speak to that?
Hi, Claire Ricker, Director of Planning and Community Development. Yes, this is, the department is sensitive to the importance of these housing development issues at town meeting, and I'm happy to explore timelines for work that align with our availability or discuss alternate solutions, such as research work or a memo or another form of deliverable that's acceptable to town meeting. Thank you.
Thank you. I think based on the past town processes into this and the straightforwardness of the proposal, I think it's really best for us to vote our conscience now rather than referring it to the committee, which would add additional cost, additional complexity that won't necessarily actually result in something that's more representative of Arlington as a whole, especially a committee that would allow some precincts to have representation but not others. So I think I would encourage you to vote against the subsidiary motions and to vote for the main motion. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Just a reminder, let's silence our phones. So I'll ask now for a speaker who is not speaking primarily in favor of the main motion. And next is, let's see, Marvin Lewitton. I'm sorry? In favor, okay. Carmine Granucci. Jill Krajewski. Okay, Ms. Krajewski, come on up.
Hi, I'm Jill Krajewski, Precinct 21. I'm going to do this in an order so I don't forget things. I have a motion to amend the Cullinane motion to amend the motion to commit. And I think it's less than 20 words. I have a motion to strike from A, H, and I the words "from a precinct that is primarily R0 to R1." And
hold on, let's processing this from A, H, and I. So like lowercase a?
Capital A, committee membership.
Part A, items H and I to strike. Okay, so what you're seeking to do is to leave the rest of the amendment intact, except for those two provisions, to restore them to the state of H and I in the motion to commit from the Goldsmith-Miller motion. Is that correct?
Yeah, correct. It would say one town resident to be appointed by the select board for H, and I would be one town meeting member to be appointed by the town moderator.
Okay. Did you catch that, Ms. Brazil? Good. So we have that recorded, and we have a second. That is now pending before us. So we have give me a second. So we have okay, we have a second. We have a motion to amend the motion to amend the motion to commit. Yeah,
I have a couple questions.
Yeah, it is. The reason why I'm contemplating this is because amendments can only go 2 levels deep relative to a motion, but the motion to commit is not a motion to amend, so it is technically a secondary amendment or amendment in the second degree to the motion to commit. So that is in order. Yeah.
All right. So I have 2 questions for, I think, you. The first question you kind of asked a little bit, but how would it be determined if a precinct is primarily R0 to R1? My precinct looks to be about, I don't know, 70-30 is what is primarily R1, 75%, 50%, 51%? I don't think that's clear.
Mr. Revlock, did you have an answer to that? Because you seemed to nod when I asked earlier about this.
My apologies, Mr. Moderator. Steve Revlock, Redevelopment Board. I thought you said, what I heard was whether a resident lived in R0 or R1. That would be fairly easy. I'm looking at the director, and I believe that if with the town's GIS system, you could take a precinct and take the land area of the different districts and figure out which, predominantly one or the other. And the director is nodding in agreement.
So that was my first question. My second question is, and I've done some research on this, have we had committee appointees by either the select board or town moderator in the past that exclude town meeting members by location or other demographics? So not a committee set up to include certain people, but a committee set up to exclude certain people or certain town meeting members.
So I'm not aware of one appointed by the moderator. I don't know if Ms. Brazil or Mr. Cunningham know of any counterexamples. And also by the select board, was it, that you were asking? What was the other appointing authority?
Yeah, the other one is the select board.
Okay, select board. Does anyone from the select board have an answer to that? Has the select board ever appointed a member of a committee that was required to be a resident of exclusively to particular precincts? Mr. Diggins?
I have been authorized by the
name
chair
and-
to
name and
answer
title.
this. At least try. Sorry, I'm Leonard Diggins, Vice Chair, Select Board, and Town Meeting Member, Precinct 3. So I'm not aware of us having done it for residency. And I see the chair shaking her head in agreement. Yeah, but I would say in terms of just exclusion, if you do pick, if you give specific requirements, then almost by definition you're excluding, others. And so logically, I think we do sometimes exclude people just by choosing, certain requirements. But in terms of residency, I'm not aware of that at all. Thank you.
So with those two questions answered, I think that this amendment, people deserve to be able to vote on, but I think it is questionable to me to vote on an amendment that excludes town meeting members and doesn't treat all town meeting members as equal. We're all voted in an equal way. I happen to live in an R2 and stare across the street to an R1 or maybe technically an R0 because it's undeveloped. I don't understand how I would not be capable of sitting on a committee and looking at a body of data and presenting a body of data to the town any differently than someone who happens to live in an R1 or an R0. I think my understanding is our past committees have been inclusive and reached out to groups we want to make sure to include, but not exclusive. And I feel that that language is exclusive. And I worry that it's a really bad precedent to set. In a little bit of research online, once town meeting sort of sets a way to put together committees, there's precedent. And I would worry that we would go beyond where someone lives, and we could ask in the future for committee membership that might even be more exclusive and people would have more of an issue with. So I ask you to consider the main motion, consider the substitute motions as you will, but I ask you to vote to amend the Cullinane motion to allow committee membership to be chosen as any town meeting member that the town moderator chooses, that's I, and any resident that the select board chooses, that's H. Thank you.
Thank you. Let's see. I'm sorry, do we have a point of order? Or point of order? Is it a question about, is it a procedural point? Is it not a procedural point? Okay. So let's see, the next, let's say, let's see, let's run through the list. We'll select the next speaker, and before they speak, while they come up, actually, while I'm doing this, actually, a better time. Can we show the moderator slides, please? The one on the Article 40 procedural order. So this is the new order. Okay. That was basically the only amendment that could be made at this point that would keep them in reverse order. So thank you for that. Okay, so let's go back to the speaker queue. And let's see, we'll take another speaker who is not speaking predominantly in support of the main motion. And first we'll ask Ezra Fisher. Okay. David Bean? Generally against. Okay, come on up.
David Bean, Precinct 8. Other speakers have or will address the issues of proper notice, tear downs, whether the proposed change would increase affordability in Arlington or improve town finances and sustainability. It's my belief that under the proposed change, most of the town's historic neighborhoods would wind up with multifamily zoning. While the protections of the historic districts and historical commissions may preserve the exteriors of existing buildings, they would do nothing to prevent the interior conversion of larger houses to apartments. And I think they would be marketable as condos. Can someone confirm this, Mr. Moderator?
I'm sorry, can you repeat the assertion?
Buildings in the historical neighborhoods that are under the protection of the Historic Districts Commission or the Historical Commission cannot easily be torn down and replaced, but I believe they can have their interiors stripped out and replaced easily.
Mr. Cunningham, do you know the answer to that question?
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Michael Cunningham, Town Council. I would distinguish between the Historic Districts Commission and the Historical Commission. The Historical Commission, as we talked about earlier in this town meeting, generally has a demolition delay capability. The Historic District Commission is much more stringent in its requirements. That's pursuant to state law. And I think there are some significant impediments to even interior work, but it's mostly exterior. But the protections afforded to Historic District Commission homes extends beyond the Historical Commission's jurisdiction.
I realize the Historical Commission primarily has the power to delay demolitions, and the Historic Districts Commission has a good deal of power over other things, whether you put up a wall, whether you change windows or something like that. Would an interior subdivision like this be necessarily marketable as condos?
Would it be marketable as condos? Mr. Revelak?
Steve Revelak, Arlington Redevelopment Board. There is a use recognized in our zoning bylaw that's called conversion to apartments, and it was primarily intended for larger properties in, say, the R4 district, so that they, could be converted into condominiums rather than, in order basically to preserve the exterior of the building. But I don't believe, this Article 40, I believe, is addressing something different. Thank you.
My fear is that projects like this could be probably done much more quickly than the tear-down rebuild that people are most concerned about, and there's certainly money to be made by converting the big old houses into smaller living units. And I'm afraid we'd see listings such as new luxury condo for sale in leafy, beautiful historic district. Thank you.
Okay, we'll go back to the top and let's remove Mr. Bean from the list, and then we'll take Rebecca Gruber next.
Rebecca Gruber, Town Meeting Member, Precinct 10. I will be voting yes on the main motion of Article 40, and I hope you will join me. Data for the past few years shows that likely we're talking about less than 25 parcels per year that could potentially benefit from this article. So for those of us who live in the approximately 50% of town to which this article pertains, you might live on a street on which one day, sometime in the future, upon completion of some new housing construction, you will have 2 new families as neighbors instead of just 1. And if you're lucky, maybe one of the children living in one of those 2 families will become your child's best friend for life. Or maybe you'll have a new pickleball partner, or a new member of your book club, or a new host for weekend barbecues. I'm encouraging you all to open your minds, your hearts, and your arms to potentially welcoming a few new neighbors to our community by voting yes to Article 40. Thank you.
Thank you. Let's go down the list looking for someone who's not primarily a proponent of the main motion under Article 40. So I'll ask Paul Selker, Robert Radosha,
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Bob Radosha, Precinct 11. Recently, I was asked to take somebody down to Kendall Square, to drive them down in the morning, come back and get them again in the evening. And driving through Somerville, Cambridge, and the streets, I was overwhelmed by how inadequate and how inaccessible traffic can flow through the area. You know, going down streets in Somerville and Cambridge, you're going down in a tunnel of trees, cars parked here, bike lanes in the middle of the street, and then the parking is somewhere else with a bus lane. Speed humps every 70 or 80 yards. And it was just awful. It took me forever to get there, which I expected it would. But on the way back at the end, when I came down Broadway into Arlington, I realized, wow, that was a horrendous nightmare traveling through all of this. And when I came down the hill into Arlington, I felt relieved. I could see the sky, I could see things, and there was room on the side of the street to move about, and it was the clutter wasn't there. And I envisioned Article 14 coming to bringing Somerville into Arlington, and I don't think we need that. I can see when you're going through there, you can't see through backyards, you can't see between houses. And I don't want it to look like that with houses right up on the street and on Mass Ave, the buildings. It's starting to happen, but I think we can put an end to it and forget about the ADUs are going to come in. They're going to fill up all these yards, and it'll be nothing but housing, and neighborhoods will go to hell. I came to Arlington in 1940, and I spent a lot of time here, the whole thing. And neighborhoods were filled with kids. Arlington was always known as a family community where kids are important. There's associations and games and sports. Somerville only has 3 Little League teams. I don't want to see that in Arlington. And I think that's kind of says who we are, and we can still continue to be that way. And we've gone through it before. And I'm not for it. And I hope we don't have to deal with it. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll go back to the top of the list with Marvin Lewitton.
Hi, Marvin Lewitton, Precinct 16. I live in an R1 district. In a two-family...
Microphone, please.
Oh, I'm sorry. I live in an R1 district in a two-family house that predates current zoning. There are half a dozen other houses like mine on the street. It's a mix of single and two families. Over the last few years, I've talked to a bunch of my neighbors and people on adjoining streets. Zoning has obviously been, a significant issue before this body. And the vast majority of the people that I've talked to live in single-family houses. And the overwhelming consensus is that houses like mine are not viewed as a blight on the neighborhood. They don't result in a reduction of my neighbors' property values. People are actually more upset about the conversion of small capes into McMansions, and which personally I think is a bigger issue. There's been a lot of talk about, how this would change the character of the town. Unfortunately, small capes are going to be bought up and leveled. I wish this was a magic wand and it wasn't just a pen and I could do something about that. And if you look at historical precedent, all these little houses are getting leveled and turned into these gigantic ones. Sadly, I missed the deadline for getting a set of pictures to the moderator before tonight. I had wanted to put something up, but I'm happy to show people pictures on my phone afterwards if anyone wants to take a look at it. There's a relatively small number of teardowns every year. I know that there have been, I don't know, maybe inflammatory is the wrong word, but there have been a lot of comments made that, every house in town is going to turn into a two-family house, similar to the way that during the ADU debate, every house was going to have an ADU in the backyard. And this is simply not true. There's maybe something like 20-ish teardowns a year, and we have how many houses in R0s and R1s? It's not going to be an enormous change. It is going to open up housing to people. I wish there was some way of ensuring that there would be a lot more truly affordable housing in town. In a capitalist society, that's not going to happen. People are going to make money off of housing. But it's going to be a lot less expensive for somebody to buy a half of a two-family than it is to buy a 4,000-foot house. That's just fact. And if we want to make Arlington more affordable to more people, I think that this is one way of doing it. And I think that, it's something that should be strongly considered. I'd urge people to vote for this and not to vote for the committee referral or the other amendments. So thank you very much.
Thank you. We're approaching 11 p.m. I think we could probably fit in one more speaker. And I could be here all night, but let's see. So let's see. We left off at Sam Polk. We're looking for someone who's not speaking primarily in support. In support. Okay. Elizabeth Carr-Jones. Okay. Come on up.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Elizabeth Carr-Jones, Precinct 14. Sorry. A little closer? Better? Thank you. The Article 40 main motion offers a solution to the problem of smaller, more affordable single-family homes being torn down and replaced with larger, less affordable ones, while also addressing the regional housing shortage. For neighborhoods where this is happening now, I understand the appeal of this solution and the urgency. Though I would like to note that this house-by-house neighborhood redevelopment with its associated loss of open space and tree canopy is happening in some R0 and R1 areas. It isn't happening everywhere. And this is that there's a real risk that the main motion will incentivize the loss of significantly more of Arlington's existing homes. It's possible that the main motion before us is the best solution for Arlington, though I feel we haven't even considered other solutions that might be better tailored to different neighborhoods and to allow us to retain more of our existing housing stock in the long run. So first, I support the motion to commit. The formation of a study committee will assure that we move our understanding of this zoning change forward with the support of the town, and that we do it now. And second, I support the amendment to the motion to commit, which specifies a public process be part of the study committee's charge. Understanding the impacts of this type of zoning change through a public process is essential. Despite what I consider heroic efforts by the article's proponents, there should have been more official town notice and a full public process for everyone impacted, which could be almost everyone in the town. The amended motion to commit also slightly shifts the composition of the study committee to provide a more broad perspective on the issue, relying more on established committees and less on town staff. My hope is that a study committee would both reflect and engage the entire community, and that it would reveal and vet potential solutions. Finally, let me say I'm grateful for everyone's work on this. Truly, I am. People trying to solve problems and work towards solutions are needed more than ever right now. Thank you, Mr. Moderator.
Thank you. Okay, we have a motion to adjourn and we have a second, but before we take that, are there any notices of reconsiderations, notices of reconsideration for the two articles that were voted on tonight? Seeing none, we have a motion to adjourn and we have a second. All those in favor of adjourning until Wednesday night at 8 p.m. say yes. All those opposed say no. We are adjourned. See you Wednesday night.